The Broad Street Review podcast is an extension of Broad Street Review, Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation, an online arts and culture journal covering the greater Philadelphia area. This podcast is an Emory production. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, director Amina Robinson drops in to talk about the Interact Theater Company production in collaboration with Theater in the X of On My Deen by Antu Yacob, commissioned as part of the Philly Cycle, on stage through June 28th. Here is my interview with Amina Robinson for On My Deen. And welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Today, I'm in the virtual studio to talk about On My Deen, which is presented by Interact Theater Company and Theater in the X. This is a world premiere commissioned as part of the Philly Cycle program. And we will learn as much as we can about this so that we can put ourselves in that theatrical space and learn about this story as its journey brought it to Interact Theater Company. And today, I'm here with the director of this production, Amina Robinson. Yay! Amina, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
So I've been talking about how I've been having conversations in and around the work that you've been involved in. And I haven't spoken to you directly, even though I have talked to you in lobbies and in passing and so on. And we shared a theatrical experience not too long ago for Some Like It Hot.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm so glad to have you in here. I'm sure you know this already, but everyone who has ever encountered you speaks so highly of you. Just your talent, your ability, just the way you are, how you make people feel seen and so on. And so I just want to applaud you for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a great deal. Thank you.
Absolutely. So just give us like the quick CV. I'm in the elevator. You look familiar. 7 people have just talked about how great you are. And then I'm like, who are you? Who is Amina? Tell us about Amina.
Okay. Amina is first a mom. I always have to say that because that's my baby. So I'm first a mom. I'm a professor. I'm a teacher. And I'm a theater maker. Yeah. Theater maker, directing mostly now, but I also act and I write and, I've produced some things. So I like to be creative. Let's say I'm a creator.
Creator, yes.
Yeah, I like that. That's
the title I love to have too. That way I'm not like locked into a specific type of creation.
Yeah.
Was theater always your path, or did something unique happen that steered you in this direction?
That's such a funny question. I actually love that question because it was such a fluke. I like to call it a huge blessing and a happy accident because when I went to college, I didn't want to take a lot of math and science. And so I literally picked the major that had the least math and science.
Oh my God.
And that happened to be theater.
Yes.
But before then, I hadn't done anything. I mean, the most I had done is when I was in high school, we read Macbeth and then we acted out the witches for class. It was like really bad. And then a friend of mine for a project, we had a VHS video recorder and we recorded ourselves acting out scenes from Beowulf. I was Beowulf. But that was it. I didn't have like big dreams of acting. I did used to want to do a whole bunch of different things, though. I remember at one point I wanted to be a dancer and then a writer. And then I think at one point I wanted to be a psychologist and a news broadcaster, like all of these different things. I think ultimately that was my sort of artistic spirit calling out to me to just start making things and being everything all at once. But yeah, that was it. College at Temple University. Not wanting to take math and science.
Wow. I had a similar path. In high school, I took some after school courses. I started out in cross country, but then one of my friends sort of invited me to join the drama club. And I was like, that's for nerds. Like, what do you mean? And I was clearly a nerd too, which is probably why he asked me. But I went there. I was like, he's a cool kid. He's a twin. Everybody loves him. Like, he must be steering me in the right direction. And I swear it was like a secret, like a plan. I heard him shaking. I saw him shaking someone's hand on the on the way out the door, and I was just like, I can't believe he tricked me. He didn't trick me, but it was an accident. But the best accident I've ever had.
The greatest accident. The greatest.
Yeah. So I'm here because one of my friends tricked me into following my actual life's path. Yeah. It's just interesting, everyone's journey, because when you hear theater, everybody seems to know that pursuing a career in the arts is a struggle in some way. Mm-hmm. They don't know the exact struggle. They just know it's a struggle. And so they worry for you. They never think that your passion, the way your eyes lit up when you said this is where you want to go, and B, that they had to get behind you. Instead, they were like, all right, well, what about something to fall back on? Like, what about math? What about science? What about computers? My grandma said, get in computers, like get inside one. There's a career in there.
Yeah, I was really lucky. My mom, I have like a really, really cool mom, and she and she understood that her daughter was all over the place at the time. So when I went to Temple, she totally, and I think I called her and I was like, Mom, so I'm going to be a theater major. She got really excited for me. She was like, oh, okay, you're going to be an actor. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be an actor. It was like not the response that 99% of the parents were giving their kids who were like, they want to be actors, for that reason, though, because it's difficult. Everybody's like, it's so hard. You plan B. But my mom was like super crazy excited that I was going to be an actor.
I would like to think, we haven't talked about children, but I would like to think that if my child came to me and said, I want to pursue, I don't know, we're in theater. So if my child said I wanted to pursue, I'd be like, yes, okay, I already have a plan. Like, it wouldn't even get full theater out. And I would probably be a stage mother for a long time. I just know that I would want to usher them forward as best as I could, but have to try really hard not to be a stage mother.
Yeah, it's hard. My son was just the lion in The Wizard of Oz at his school.
Yes.
And
yes,
I almost spontaneously combusted in my seat. He was up there and I'm like,
That's my baby. That's my
baby. Exactly.
Miss, you're on your phone. That's my baby right there. Y'all missing it?
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think kids in theater at such a young age, it's just such a beautiful moment. Like, they don't even have to be your kids to be like, yeah, they're on the right path here, and I am here for this.
It's so good. It's so good for them. It opens them up. And the funny part is, like, my son is totally like, I'm not in the theater. He's like, I'm not a theater person. I just wanted to do that one thing one time, that whole thing, But even still, it just makes them blossom, when kids get involved in the arts like that, they just blossom. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's all good.
I periodically use the hashtag, and it's long and obnoxious, but that's the point. The hashtag I use is theater kids are the best kids.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. That's true. I love that. Absolutely love that.
How do you see that energy? Like, I've been to shows where I want to hear every word, but there are two super excited theater kids in front of me, and I'm like, you know what? It's their show. Yep. I may not get the experience I want out of this, but it's their show. I want to be here for them being so excited about being here.
Yes, exactly. Cool. Exactly.
All right, we've laid a foundation.
Oh, foundation laid. Okay, check.
Yes. So we're here to talk about On My Dean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell tell us about On My Dean, and then tell me about your first impressions of the show.
Okay. On My Dean, I always have a hard time telling about the show because I don't want to give any spoilers away because I want people to come see it.
Mhm.
But On My Dean is at its core a story that is about love. Number one, I've always considered it to be a love letter to Islam. And to Muslims and their faith. I think that the show explores a lot of themes surrounding faith and people's ability to maintain their faith and continue on their spiritual path. I mean, hence the title On My Dean. That's what that means. It's about their spiritual path. How they are able to stay the course of their walk with the divine. The play very much so, very heavily deals with that and the challenges that people face along their way, the struggles that they have with faith. But also love, in that it's a love story between two people. It's like a really beautiful love story between two people who meet when they're children, and it spans many, 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 many years. It spans the entire lifetime of their relationship and how it grows and evolves and falls apart and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really beautiful love story. It also deals with death and grieving, which is a very important theme in it as well. In terms of my connection to it, that actually has to do with a bit of grieving because I lost my dad a little over a year ago, and my dad was a Muslim, and he was a Black Muslim who got into it in the Nation of Islam back in the 70s, which is the same thing that happens in this piece itself, except it happens in 62 because it goes from 1962 to 2016, the play. But it isn't really far off of my mother and father's story, which I just find so incredibly touching and interesting. And falling on when Seth sent it to me, it was right on the heels of my father passing. So when I read it, like 3 or 4 pages in, I was crying because I was like, oh, bean pies and my daddy, and and I just felt like I really wanted to be involved in it because although it's not my parents' story, there are so many things that that struck me and rang true in considering my parents' story, and then, it's part of the Philly cycle. So Antu has done lots of research about Philadelphia and, Philadelphians. And there's a lot of like really interesting tidbits of Philly information and stuff and fun facts in there. So it felt like a really good project to do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about the writer.
The writer,
Antu Yacob.
Antu is a writer, a producer, an actor. She just, one of these multi-hyphenate artists. Like, we have a lot of multi-hyphenate artists in Philly. She's one of those, even though she's not from Philly. And she's just a really beautiful, lovely person. She herself is a Muslim, and she has a very, very interesting story about her journey to Islam. Or her journey back to Islam, shall I say. She has a really, really interesting story. Not my story to tell, so I won't try to make up the bits and pieces that she told me because I might say something incorrectly. I just remember it's really interesting. And she's a really great person, She cares very deeply about making sure that this story is represented authentically, which I think is very important. They've been working with community partners and stuff like that so that we can get things right,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we're doing it right.
I think that has been great. When people walk into the theater, they sit down and they see the polished, finished work. They see everything that comes along together, the production elements, and then the dialogue and the performance. But they don't realize that there's so much conversation dramaturgically that happens that allows everyone to understand the path that they're on, the story they're trying to tell, and the message they're trying to deliver. And so, hearing about all those foundations, I think it's always good because everybody doesn't read through the program. It's like people put the program back, and I'm like, this is a free publication. What do you mean?
Yeah.
We literally slaved to the last minute to get a print on this, everything up to date. And they were like, thank you. Just put it aside. There's so much information to take with you. Read it on the train ride home.
Yeah. Yeah. And this show in particular, like the amount of information that was required to make sure that we were doing this properly and handling this material with care was great. The burden of proof was great. We even had, even in as much as our last dress rehearsal, we had so many interesting things happen, and the script was changing and things were altering as we went. Even design elements were changing, like costumes, because there was one moment where the script, the indication was that one of the characters was not as far along on her conversion into the Islamic faith. She was not as far along. And so we costumed her in a way that would indicate sort of a halfway point, sort of like, she's in it, but not, but then when they came, they were like, no, that's not the way that works. Yeah. They were like, if she's in the Nation of Islam and she's out in public wearing that scarf, she would have a longer dress on, all that kind of stuff. So things like that happened throughout, which was really great. And we changed it as necessary, as we should. Yeah.
I know one of my earlier, I entered into Philadelphia theater as a stage manager. And early on in my on my path for in Philadelphia, I worked with a group that was doing a production that was a theater of witness, and it was these conversations about incarceration from people from various parts of that conversation. People who were previously incarcerated, people not affected by incarcerated family members and loved ones and so on. And so all those stories were really interesting. But I do remember there was a Muslim woman who was part of one of the pieces, and I was being introduced to her, and I reached out to shake her hand. And she told me that she wasn't allowed to touch another man. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, nice to meet you. And I just sort of did like a respectful bow. But it was in that moment that I realized, I'm like, I don't understand Muslim culture, so I'm going to respect everything I'm introduced to.
Yeah.
And just, try to understand it. Yeah. Because like, I think when people don't know things, they just go, I don't know, I'm not going to do that. Like,
exactly.
But instead, it's like, this is her culture. I'm going to respect her culture. And I'm not going to pry and probe her for a ton of information, but whatever she wants to share with me, I'm just going to process and receive.
Exactly. We had a moment, it's so interesting you say the hand touch. Like, we had a moment like that in the show where I staged that in this one moment he touches her hand. That was another moment. Yeah. And the response that we got back was it was scandalous enough that the two of them were seated so closely together. They were like, that's scandalous enough. They were like, we can't have them sitting that close and touching hands like that. I was like, oh wow, okay. And and I had to respect that and change that, because I had to change it in the staging of the moment, and I happily did, because the reality is, I think when we're writing or working within a particular culture that we're not a part of, or a particular faith that we're not a part of, we have to be receptive to hearing the truth and the reality of how things operate. I can't just say, oh, I'm going to take artistic license and, and have them touching each other. Like, it doesn't work that way. We really want to represent the community in the way that they see themselves, as opposed to the way imposing our or my or anybody else's judgments on what we feel about the community,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what was your first impression of this piece? First of all, when did you read it? And then what was your impression of it at that point?
Okay. When I read it initially, Seth sent me a draft and he was like, this is going to change a lot. He said, he was like, it's still in process. And I said, okay. And I read it and I thought it was a really sweet story, you know? I thought it was really sweet. And again, I told you the connection that I had with my dad, so it was just really moving to me get an opportunity to work on this piece. And then as it developed, it's just become deeper and richer. Antu is really a great collaborator in that she is open to dialogue and discussion from all ends, like from the actors, from Seth, from myself. You know, she's really open to discussing and fleshing out what the piece is. And the piece that you see finally on the stage is that fleshing out, you know, after asking lots of questions and figuring out what it is. So I think she has a really solid piece on stage right now.
Great.
Or starting tonight for opening anyway.
Yes. Which, as you're listening to this, it's kind of past tense, but I am going to the show tonight. So I'm very excited to be talking to you hours before I'm going to experience the whole thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the cast. And I'm interested to know, like, what is their relationship to the Muslim community in Islam?
We have one of our leads who plays the daughter is a Muslim woman named Naja. And so she just has been really, really touched by having the opportunity to play a Muslim woman on stage, you know, because how many opportunities does she get to do that in a piece, especially that is written, you know, by a Muslim woman for the Muslim community with all of the community partnerships and everything that we have. So it's been a really, really special, transformative experience for Naja in this. The other cast members, we've had, including myself, we've had to learn a lot about how to handle all of the things in the pieces. Like there's a washing ritual called wudu, and at one point there was the salat was in there, which is a prayer. And so we just had to learn a lot about what these rituals were, what the significance of them are, and everything like that in order to work on the piece. And it's been such a wonderful exploration. It's been a wonderful exploration. The cast is really, really fantastic. We have a surprise addition to our cast.
Oh yes, I did hear about this.
The marvelous, wonderful Cash Goins, who is iconic in all ways, stepped in. We had to have a last minute replacement, and Cash stepped in. He was notified, or we sort of solidified everything on Sunday morning, this past Sunday morning. So for me, I was like, whoa, this must be an actor's nightmare. You know, you get cast in a role, you have to learn all this material. The show opens on Thursday and it's Sunday, you know? So he found out about it on Sunday. And then we met briefly to just talk through some of the script. And then he saw the show that afternoon. He didn't rehearse on Monday because he's a full-time working human being.
Yeah.
So we couldn't do anything on Sunday. We rehearsed for a few hours on Tuesday. We rehearsed for a few hours on Wednesday. And he went on last night in the preview and was off book.
Wow.
Off book. It was wild. Off book and near word perfect too.
Wonderful.
It was wild to see. Like I was in my chair, adrenaline pumping, like, is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen? I think I was more nervous than he was, you know? But he did it and it was so awesome. And then and he goes on tonight.
That's
and
great.
He's gonna be on for the rest of the run.
That's great. It's always funny in some talkbacks, there's always someone who says, how did you memorize all those lines? It's always something that just blows people's minds, but it's like muscle memory, it's repetition, and so on. And like Cash didn't have that.
No, this would be
in the traditional rehearsal phase.
Yeah, this would be a very good opportunity. This would be the time for an audience member to say, how did you memorize all of those lines? That's the question I have. How did he memorize all of these lines?
I'll say, well, I illegally recorded the show and I play it back in my ears.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, like I said, every time I've seen Cash on stage, I think the last time I saw him on stage was at Probably at the Lantern. No. It
Did you
wasn't the
see King
Lantern.
Hedley?
Yes, it was
Yep, King
Arden. It
Hedley.
was Arden. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was a wonderful performance.
Yeah. I also think a lot of us have, because I know I have a great portion of my family who are still Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's also a connection that I have. And I believe Cash also has a great section of his family who are Muslims. So I definitely think that all of the people involved have just, all the stories, all the lives have just been sort of swirling.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like a collection of people who are there with purpose,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I don't know a whole lot about the Muslim faith, but at the same time, I'm well aware of the commitment.
Mhm.
Because I've had coworkers who, we were well aware that they had to step away at certain times a day to pray, and
Yep.
they needed various things, and all of us just please tell us how we can help, how we can be supportive,
Yeah.
and it was great.
Yeah, there's a really great, that is one thing about the faith that strikes me all the time that I think is really beautiful in
Mhm.
relation to somebody's walk with their faith, and that dedicate, like, what the true nature of faith is, and a dedication to a path that you feel is the path for your life. There's this really beautiful moment or section of text where, without any spoilers, where someone is talking to someone else, but they talk about how many times they pray a day.
Mm.
And I'm going to mess this line up tremendously, but because I'm known for that. But the line is something about praying 5 times a day to, oh, see, I done messed it up already. I can't even think of what the line is, but it's this really great line about why this character prays 5 times a day. And it just is really beautiful. And I'm just like, wow, that is, I think about my own walk with faith, and I'm like, that takes, like you said, a lot of dedication.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of dedication to say 5 times a day, I'm checking in.
Yeah. And I think it's hard for, I think it might present a challenge for some people who are married to their jobs. It's like to think about how something else in their lives could be more important.
More important. Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said about how your faith and your spirituality takes center stage in your life too.
Yeah.
Because it informs the you that you put out into the world.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's absolutely right.
And I can also imagine, like, I was thinking about, there've been a lot of representation over the past years in television. I was thinking about the comedian Rami Youssef.
I don't know.
He had a show called Rami, and it was about him growing up in America, but like having a deeply Muslim family, and how trying to stay true to their culture also while being sort of pulled by the pressures and the enticements of like modern American life. And it was just interesting. He had a lot of like notable actors of the faith who portrayed characters to help kind of tell that story. It was a comedy too, so it was very much like, here's the parts that aren't glamorous and like somewhat embarrassing, but this is all part of this. Like, how do you return to yourself? How do you return to your faith? After all these things have happened. And his character wasn't perfect by any means, but it was just interesting. I just want to see more. Like, you see people that we walk past you all the time, and you're just like, I'd love to know. I would love to know, like, where their feet take them every day, like what their life is like without prying, but like to have a better understanding. And it also makes me think, in society, like, there are so many different people that just pass us every day, and would we want a world that was any less than that?
Yep, every day. And everybody's carrying their own things and has their own story, and their own beliefs. You're right. You're right. And we walk by these people every day.
Mm-hmm.
We walk by one another every day.
Are there moments in this piece that stand out for you more? Like when you get to this scene, you're like, oh, this one.
There's at least 3 moments in each scene that I'm like, I like this moment. Some of the more ridiculous ones that stand out are at the spoiler alert.
Hey?
I'm actually not going to spoil it. I found a way already to not spoil it. So
there are a lot of moments
there's
that
a line where one of the characters is asked about if he has any like if he has a wife. And his response cracks me up so bad. I don't even know why, but he's like, there was a couple women down in DC back in what, I don't know what it is about that line, but whenever that happens, that cracks me up. There's the first scene is so incredibly sweet at the end of the scene. It's like the sweetest thing you've ever seen. You'll see it tonight at it's the end of Act 1, Scene 1. It's like such a sweet, wonderful moment of coming of age that is so precious and lovely. What else is there? There are lots. There's so many moments that just make you feel tingly.
That's great. I mean, of course we'll find them, but it's always good in conversation to say, like, there's too many moments. I don't want to give that away. And that's a juicy one too. Like, you just got to come see it.
Yeah, I don't want to give them away.
Yeah.
The play is written in such a way that it's like, they're like, I described it once to the actors when we were talking about it. It's like each scene is sort of like its own little one act. So, and because of that, that's part of why it's hard to pin down, because it's like all these little mini stories. Structurally, the playwright has done something pretty interesting that you'll see. Again, I cannot give it away because when audiences figure it out, they're like, wait a minute, So structurally, there's something fun and interesting going on with this show. And because of that element, that particular theatrical device, the scenes play like little one-act plays. It's like a little string of one-act plays.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the piece is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And
it's a little shorter than that, I think.
They
timed it when we were still in rehearsal.
Okay. I
was like, we're going to get faster.
Well, I was just wondering, like, for it being that long, like right now we have Glitter in the Glass on stage at Theater Exile, and it's a 2-hour play because the story needed more time, and so it's a longer piece. And so I'm wondering, like, with this runtime, was there more that was cut out of the story?
There have been cuts and additions this whole time because this is a new piece. So, so because of that, even up until like a couple days ago, there were cuts, made to the script. So there have been cuts and additions happening this entire time. I think it has stayed in the realm of high 80s to early 90s in pages. Cool. So it hasn't really gotten super long. A lot of the time of this is really about the actors being able to take their time and live and breathe through some of these moments, And again, it has gotten shorter. I think Act one is longer than Act 2. I think Act 1 is like maybe an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. And then Act 2, I think now is down to like 30 minutes or 35 minutes, something like that. So it's a little bit.
It's so interesting. People see the runtime because they got to make plans.
I know. I know.
I want to give myself fully to this experience. I just need to not worry about the train or not worry about a car coming or not worry about my meter.
Right.
Cool. So is there anything else you want to say about the piece before we part?
just to come see it. I think that one of the things that Interact does really well that I've always admired about their work is that they put the work of not new playwrights, but they put new plays on stage. It's like a great home for new plays. This play in particular is brand spanking new, and they also are really good at telling at like finding really small slices of life and exploring that small slice of life. That's one thing that I have really liked about the work that I've seen there. And this piece is no exception. They have taken they've decided to tell a story about a cross section of our population that I don't think is very well represented on stage. And the story itself is really small and intimate and beautiful. It's not trying to encapsulate all of what Islam is. It's not trying to encapsulate everything that it means to be a Muslim. It is a story about a particular few Muslims in Philadelphia. And with that, it's beautiful. And it's something that I feel needs to be seen,
Right.
So come see it. That's all I want to say. Come see it. Check it out. See about this Muslim couple in this play.
Absolutely. All right. The production is On My Dean. It is presented by Interact Theater Company and Theater in the X. It's a world premiere commissioned as part of the Philly Cycle. And you can learn more about all of this by going to Interact Theater, and that's theaterre.org. And you should buy tickets, as in plural, because theater is more fun with a +1. On My Dean is on stage through June 28th. Amina Robinson, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me on opening night.
Yeah,
There's a bunch of things you got to focus on, but I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. It's been a pleasure to experience your work throughout this community and to see how you resonate with so many people and all the positive, wonderful things I have to say about you. I think it's so great that you're a part of our community.
Well,
and
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for taking this time with me. It was truly a pleasure.
Of course, I enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Thank you to our guest, Amina Robinson, for joining us on today's podcast. The Broad Street Review podcast is an Emory production. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, visit us online at em3ry.com. Get involved with Broad Street Review. Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com to find out how. While you're there, help keep us running and click donate at the top. There you can also find our social media links. Thank you for your part in keeping the conversation going.